It's 2 a.m. and you're still awake. Not because you're not tired, you passed tired 3 hours ago. Your eyes burn, your neck aches from the angle. Your thumb has developed its own particular soreness, a modern repetitive strain that doesn't yet have a medical name. You tell yourself you'll stop after this one last video, this one last thread, this one last update about the crisis that's unfolding somewhere, everywhere, nowhere you can actually touch. But you don't stop. You can't stop. Because somewhere between midnight and now, you've crossed over into that strange twilight state where exhaustion and anxiety merge into a kind of hypnotic trance. You're not really reading anymore. You're absorbing, mainlining tragedy directly into your nervous system. Another shooting, another climate disaster, another political catastrophe, another sign that everything is falling apart. You know you should put the phone down. You know this is hurting you. You can feel it in the tightness in your chest, the shallow breathing, the way your heart occasionally skips a beat when a particularly devastating headline scrolls by. But stopping feels impossible. Because what if you miss something? What if the very moment you look away is when something crucial happens? What if your vigilance, this exhausting, crushing vigilance, is the only thing standing between you and being caught completely unprepared? So you scroll. Through the death counts and the dire predictions, through the outrage and the think pieces about the outrage, through comment sections that confirm your worst fears about humanity. You scroll through it all, looking for something, an answer maybe, or at least an ending. But there is no ending. There's always more. The feed never stops. The bad news is infinite, and you've become infinite too, stretched thin across every tragedy on earth, bearing witness to all of it, capable of fixing none of it. This is doom scrolling, the compulsive consumption of negative news, the inability to look away from the slow-motion car crash of civilization. We've developed a word for it because we needed one, because this behavior is so specific to our moment, so utterly without precedent in human history. Never before have we had access to every terrible thing happening everywhere all at once. Never before have we been able to marinate in real-time despair on a global scale. But naming it hasn't helped us stop. If anything, it's made us more aware of our powerlessness against it. We doom scroll about doom scrolling. We share articles about how bad it is for us while doing the very thing the articles warn against. We've become sophisticated about our own destruction, analytical about our addiction, eloquent about our inability to look away. The platforms understand this perfectly. They know that fear and anger are the most reliable drivers of engagement. They know that negative content spreads faster and farther than positive content. Studies from MIT show that false news stories are 70% more likely to be retweeted than true ones, and the false stories that spread fastest are those that trigger fear, disgust, and surprise. The algorithm doesn't care about your well-being. It cares about your attention. And nothing captures attention quite like the feeling that the world is ending. The psychology behind doom scrolling is rooted in something ancient, our negativity bias, the evolutionary quirk that makes us pay more attention to threats than opportunities. For our ancestors, this made sense. The cost of missing a predator was death. The cost of missing a berry bush was mild hunger. Our brains evolved to err on the side of paranoia, to assume the rustle in the bushes was danger until proven otherwise. But this system was designed for immediate, local threats that required action. See tiger, run from tiger, survive tiger. The anxiety was purposeful, bounded, resolvable. Now we're applying that same hypervigilance to abstract, distant, complex threats we can't run from. Climate change, democratic backsliding, economic collapse, pandemics. The tiger is everywhere and nowhere. It's always approaching but never quite arrives. We can never run, but we can never stop watching for it either. Psychologist Susan David calls this emotional rigidity, getting stuck in patterns of thinking and feeling that no longer serve us. Doom scrolling is emotional rigidity at scale. We become stuck in a loop of seeking information that confirms our fears, which heightens our anxiety, which drives us to seek more information. The confirmation isn't comforting, it's terrifying. But somehow, being right about how bad things are feels better than uncertainty. There's also what researchers call obsessive passion, as opposed to harmonious passion. Where harmonious passion enriches your life, obsessive passion controls it. You don't choose to engage, you feel compelled to. The activity becomes not a source of joy, but a source of temporary relief from the anxiety of not doing it. Sound familiar? That's doom scrolling, an obsessive passion for witnessing catastrophe. In our daily lives, doom scrolling manifests as a kind of ambient dread that colors everything. You carry the weight of every crisis in your pocket. You wake up already behind on the latest disasters. You go to dinner with friends and spend half the time sharing apocalyptic news stories, turning what should be connection into communal anxiety. You try to watch a movie but can't stop checking your phone for updates on whichever horror is currently unfolding. Relationships strain under the weight of secondhand trauma. You snap at loved ones not because they've done anything wrong, but because you're carrying the accumulated tension of 1,000 headlines. Children absorb your anxiety, learning to see the world as fundamentally unsafe before they've had a chance to form their own relationship with it. Partners become either fellow doom scrollers, locked in a feedback loop of shared catastrophizing, or they become the enemy, accused of not taking things seriously enough. The physical symptoms accumulate slowly, then all at once. The tension headaches, the disrupted sleep, the digestive issues that come from a nervous system stuck in permanent fight or flight. Your body, which cannot distinguish between a real tiger and a terrifying headline, maintains a constant state of emergency readiness. Cortisol floods your system. Your immune response weakens. You age faster, heal slower, think less clearly. Work suffers because how can you focus on spreadsheets when democracy is collapsing? Hobbies atrophy because how can you justify painting or gardening when the world is on fire? Joy becomes something suspicious, almost offensive. To be happy feels like either ignorance or complicity. So you scroll instead, as if your suffering could somehow balance the cosmic scales, as if your witness could somehow matter. But here's the darker truth. Doom scrolling isn't just about fear, it's about control, or rather, the illusion of control. When we feel powerless, information feels like power. If we just know enough, understand enough, see all the angles, maybe we can predict what's coming. Maybe we can prepare. Maybe we can avoid being blindsided. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote about the dizziness of freedom, the anxiety that comes from having infinite choices and no clear path. But doom scrolling presents us with the opposite, the dizziness of powerlessness, the anxiety of having infinite awareness but no meaningful choices. We can see everything but change nothing. We're omniscient but impotent, all-knowing but helpless. This creates what psychologists call learned helplessness, the condition where, after repeated exposure to uncontrollable negative events, we stop trying to change our situation even when we actually could. We become passive recipients of bad news, professional witnesses to decline. The more we scroll, the more we reinforce our belief that everything is terrible and nothing can be done. The very act of doom scrolling becomes evidence for its own necessity. There's also something performative about it, though we rarely admit this. In a culture that equates awareness with virtue, doom scrolling becomes a kind of moral practice. We bear witness because it feels more ethical than looking away. We suffer through the news because comfort feels complicit. We perform our concern, our outrage, our despair, as if the intensity of our feeling could substitute for action. But what if doom scrolling is actually a form of dissociation? What if, by spreading our attention across every global crisis, we avoid dealing with the local, personal, manageable problems in our own lives? It's easier to despair about climate change than to have that difficult conversation with your partner. It's simpler to rage about political corruption than to address your own patterns of self-sabotage. The global becomes an escape from the personal. The apocalyptic becomes a distraction from the everyday. We become connoisseurs of catastrophe while our own lives, the only lives we can actually influence, atrophy from neglect. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron talks about Shenpa, the urge, the hook that triggers our habitual patterns. That moment when you could choose differently but don't. Doomscrolling is pure Shenpa, the hook of anxiety that pulls us into patterns we know are destructive but feel powerless to resist. We're not addicted to the news itself. We're addicted to the cycle of tension and temporary relief, the ritual of checking and confirming, the familiar misery of knowing things are bad. Breaking free from doomscrolling isn't about ignorance or denial. It's about recognizing that your constant vigilance isn't actually helping anyone. Not the victims of the tragedies you're reading about, not your loved ones, and certainly not yourself. Your exhaustion doesn't diminish anyone else's suffering. Your anxiety doesn't prevent catastrophes. Your witness, when it comes at the cost of your own capacity to function, helps nothing and no one. This doesn't mean turning away from the world's problems. It means engaging with them differently. Instead of consuming every detail of every crisis, choose one or two issues you can actually influence. Instead of spreading your anxiety thin across infinite tragedies, focus your energy where it might matter. Instead of performing concern, practice actual care for yourself, your community, your small corner of the world. The artist Jenny Odell writes about doing nothing as a form of political resistance, refusing the attention economy's demand for constant engagement. Perhaps the most radical thing you can do in a world designed to exhaust you is to refuse exhaustion, to guard your energy like the finite resource it is, to recognize that your attention is not a renewable resource but something precious that, once scattered, is difficult to gather again. Tomorrow, when you feel the pull to check the news, to confirm that yes, things are still bad, pause. Ask yourself, will knowing this detail change what I do today? Will this information help me or anyone else? Am I seeking understanding or just feeding anxiety? Am I bearing witness or just rehearsing powerlessness? The world will continue to have problems whether you're watching or not. Crises will unfold whether you're scrolling or sleeping. The difference is that if you're not exhausting yourself with constant vigilance, you might actually have the energy to do something about the problems you can reach. Your phone doesn't need you to hold vigil over the world's pain. The algorithm doesn't care about your suffering. The feed will never tell you you've seen enough, that you can rest now, that your shift is over. That permission has to come from you. The world doesn't need your endless witnessing of its wounds. It needs your wholeness, your capacity, your undepleted presence. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot save a drowning world if you're drowning in information yourself.